Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we're joined by CEO of Rocky Mountain Reagents, Chief Branding Officer at 710 Spirits, CEO of Cannabis Kitchen Supplies, ILDA board member, the treasurer for the board of directors of the National Cannabis Industry Association, and a 2023 Colorado Titan 100, Liz Geisleman. Liz, welcome to the show.
It's nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Cyberlinks is a complete technology solution provider that ensures your business not only has the most reliable and professional IT service, but also has the right cybersecurity protection to ensure your business stays productive and safe. Many businesses think they're too small to be a target for cyber criminals, and that's simply not the case. We've had so many companies come to us for help after they've been hit, and they're always surprised because they thought they were too small to be a target, or they thought they couldn't afford good cybersecurity protection. If you think you're too small or can't afford proper cybersecurity protection, check out our website, cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. You'll be surprised just how affordable proper cybersecurity protection really is. And now back to our show. Liz, can't thank you enough for making the time to come on, especially given how much you've got to juggle.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a fun, this year I'm learning to say no more because I've said yes too many times and I've got a very full life. Life balance isn't one of my strong suits. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't think life balance is the strong suit for a lot of successful people. I think, we kind of integrate business into life and life into business. And, that's how you get ahead in anything, right?
That's true.
Well, let me ask you, Rocky Mountain Reagents, can you tell us what do they do? What's the story?
Okay, so Rocky Mountain Reagents has been in business since 1951. We started as a microbiology histology company providing stains to hospitals. And then we've kind of grown from there. So we're now in 7 different industry sectors and markets, including aerospace, wastewater testing, forensic science, education, semiconductor, electronic grades, and then, of course, cannabis was something that came along in Colorado 15 years ago. And we kind of decided at that point to also help that industry. With that, we have 710 Spirits as one of our brands, which is a kind of a subset of art chemistry that we do just for extraction and testing of cannabis products. And then we have, we just acquired Cannabis Kitchen Supplies, which also does all the instrumentation and the equipment that goes into making edibles in that market. We specialize as a chemical company in high-grade chemistry. So we only do food grades or pharmaceutical grades or electronic grades. So we really hit a different niche to the chemical market than most do. And with that experience being in food and pharma, cannabis was kind of natural for us to start talking to people about how to produce clean and good cannabis products that weren't going to be at risk for public safety.
Huh. That's really interesting. We just talked to somebody who was in, it was basically a cannabinoid that they're doing for glaucoma. So they're they're just going into stage 2 trials. So is that how they get that? Because I'm not really, I'm no scientist. And I think a lot of people are kind of, curious, how do you go from that cannabis to the kind of cannabinoid? And that's where the extract comes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that cannabis kind of has put this big spotlight on extraction, right? But if you look at any bakery aisle, you've got peppermint oils and olive oils and cinnamon oil and vanilla extract. All that extraction is being done in the same process. So they're taking a raw material plant and they're doing it by one of 3 ways. They're either doing a heat press, something that they're actually just pressing the oils out of, like you see in some olive oils, or they're doing a chemical extraction where most of the time they use 200 proof ethanol, which is moonshine. They extract it because oil is soluble in that. And so they pull that out into the ethanol, and then they distill the ethanol away from the oil, and then you have the oil. Cannabis is no different. Anytime you're not trying to pull oil out of something, you've got to have it in a carrier that will dissolve it to get it away from the plant material, and then you take that that thing that you've dissolved the oil into away from it. And it's a pretty simple process, but in cannabis, it's kind of funny because everybody in cannabis thinks they're the first ones there, but that's not the case at all. We worked with people doing honey extracts, capsaicin extracts, peppermint, lavender oil. All of those essential oils are extracted in the same manner.
Really? So you just, and so this is, now it goes into that 710 spirits, that extract that you do. It's like, it's an ethanol, right? And you
Yeah.
just, and so they basically just combine the two together, and because oil and
Yeah, and there's
alcohol
a
don't
lot more
mix.
like equipment in between there, but basically it's like tea. You soak your product in ethanol or a solvent. It pulls the oil out, and then you put it through a heat steam, or there's several different distillations to separate the oil from whatever your carrier is. And at the end you get an oil. And then you have to test it and make sure it doesn't have pesticides, because you're concentrating also the plant, right? So you have to
All
test it for
right.
pesticides. You have to test it just like all those other extracts are doing too, heavy metals, all of those things. So we provide the chemistry to test it. We provide the
Oh, wow.
chemistry to extract it. And then we provide a lot of the chemistry that goes into the edibles as well. So the weird stuff that you can't get at the store, like the gummy or tapioca oils or those types
Yeah.
of things that you need to make gummies or hard candy, pilling, tableting. And we've done that for years in the nutraceutical market. And so that's why cannabis was kind of a natural fit for us.
Huh. Very cool. So you guys are the actual manufacturers of all of these different products for, all
No,
these
so
chemicals.
so we have 3,000 products that we manufacture, and those are typically for the laboratory. So those are the testing reagents. Those are the ones that are more dilutions, like normal solutions, molar solutions, indicators, pH buffers. We manufacture those in-house. Anything that's considered more of a raw material, like I don't want to ever distill that much 200 proof ethanol.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
want anybody around with all of that. So we distribute a lot of the raw goods.
Oh, got
From
it.
I think we have about 75 different chemical manufacturers that we buy from, and we do that from global sources as well. And then from there, when you mentioned the OEM stuff, we do a lot of white labeling and custom manufacturing for all sorts of different industries. A lot of instrumentation company will have just one solution that they need for their instrument, but they don't want anybody to know that we exist, so that they can get a consumable that goes along with their instrument. So we manufacture for them, full label, all of that stuff. So we've got, two sides of the business. Cannabis, the reason I speak about it so much is because it does represent about 30% of my business as it is right now, but it certainly is the one that seems to need the most information and education
Yeah.
right now. But the other industry, certainly semiconductor, is, with what we've seen with the pandemic and supply chains, semiconductor and microchips and circuit board manufacturers are coming back in a big way in this country. And we're seeing a lot of people needing chemistry to test those things. Test the
Mm.
baths for like a plating bath. They have to test if there's enough nickel or copper. And so we supply those chemistries as well.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. I'm really curious. How do you get into, and it's probably the same thing, but the forensic stuff was, when I saw that on your website, I was like, really? That seems like
Yeah.
such a leap. I mean, obviously they got to get it from somewhere, right? I mean, it's not like, the FBI and police departments are, kind of making this stuff up, making it on their own. So
Well,
how did you
actually,
guys
they
get into it?
were.
Oh,
So
no
that's
kidding.
that's really fascinating. How we got into that. That was about 22 years ago. We had a police department locally say, "Well, just start making this stuff for us." And then their lead investigator and I started working on these products. And now we have developed an entire line of products, and we're the largest manufacturer of forensic chemistry in the world, wet chemistry. We don't do the fingerprint powders or anything, but like the bioluminescent stains that you see on CSI, where you spray the
Uh-huh.
blood spatter pattern and it glows purple, that type of stuff. But what
Cool.
we did was, because a lot of these labs were making it at their lab, at the crime scene, or not a crime scene, at the labs back at the sheriff's office or whatever, but they were getting a lot of inconsistency in product. And it wasn't being tested. And so you could get to a crime scene, spray something and not work, and then you lose your evidence. So with our process, we have lot traceability. We qualify all of our vendors. We do testing of all of the materials, and so it gave them a better platform if something were to go wrong at a crime scene, that they could actually say, I know this stuff works. So if it's not luminescing, it's not blood, So that was how we got into it. And then we started making these kits that you could put into investigators' cars. So you don't have to go take, an entire mattress back to the lab. You could literally spray it there, find out if this is what you're looking to take, and then you could just cut the pieces out that you needed to get what you needed from it. So this products we've developed, we've done 10 years of stability and shelf life testing on, and you can have these in cars. You can freeze them; they can get hot, and then you just pre-mix them. Just mix them up on the site, and you're ready to go. And so it really changed, the way that we do things. It's our biggest global seller, which that was a surprise to me. We sell quite a bit of these materials to the government. We sell a lot of these materials to, FBI, but also DoD and local police forces all across the country. But the big one that was surprising is how many countries have been starting to order this. So we now have 5 distributors in other countries selling this product. So it's
Wow.
really fascinating to see the way that it has changed. But it's also, it's hard to be an expert in everything. So if you're the investigator on the scene and you have to figure out how this whole thing was constructed and be, ballistics expert and a blood spatter expert and now you got to be a chemist too. There's too many factors there. So we kind of pulled that back and said, we'll take care of that part for you. And it's been wonderfully successful and another fun industry. I mean, that's a whole different type of trade show and industry that's
Right.
really fascinating.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you, because you guys, I mean, you've got to find people who produce stuff, and then you're going, you've got distributors that work for you. So how do you go about finding, good producers? So, how does, what you and others, what advice do you have on finding a good producer?
Well, for us, I mean, we're lucky that we've been in the industry or in industry for, 50 plus years, or more than that. I haven't been here that long, but for a long time. So we have relationships with some of these chemical producers that we've had for 20, 30 years. And so we kind of know who's good and who's not. And then you've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions throughout the years and how that's kind of changed some of the landscapes. But for us, it has really been just about that. When we go overseas to try and find new sources, that's when it becomes a little more tricky because, um, India may produce it differently than China might or Taiwan. And so you really have to watch kind of the product quality. So we always bring in samples. We test everything here, make sure before we qualify a vendor. And then clearly the pandemic changed all of our worlds in so many ways. But on supply chain, we would only have 1 or 2 vendors that we would buy these things from. Now we've had to go more than a half inch deep on our suppliers and go 3 inches deep. So now we have 5 or 6 suppliers to any one product that is qualified because you just never know if they shut down a port or if there's a revolution in a country, which we've seen, a war in Czechoslovakia, or I mean, all of this stuff has changed the way that we look at things. And being that a lot of our products are elemental chemistry, meaning like it
Yeah.
starts with copper or starts with silver or starts with lithium, the lithium deposits where they're located, where the tsunami that hit Japan, when that happened, it took out 60% of the world's iodine, just
Oh,
like that.
wow.
And so we got globally into a situation where we were in a really tough market with iodine. And to set up another iodine production facility takes about 18 months. So it was 18 months of 4 or 5 times the amount of pricing on that stuff because the supply was just not there. So it's just,
Yeah.
and it can take any one little thing to just disrupt major supply chains. And people don't even know. If we talk about lithium, large amounts of lithium is in the area in which is war torn right now. So when you think about batteries such as your phones, and lithium is a massive component in a lot of our batteries. This is going to hit at some point, and it's not so it's kind of tracking all of that stuff at an elemental level, and then trying to figure out how do we protect ourselves and our clients.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think people realize just how globally sensitive the supply chain is. I mean, they talk about things heating up with China. Oh my goodness. I mean, talk about a supply chain nightmare. I mean, it's just, and it's kind of that ripple effect, right? It doesn't even have to be China. As to your point with lithium, I mean, it's in everything. It's in your Tesla batteries. It's in your cell phones and all kinds of things, and that jacks up the prices just because you can't get those basic elements, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, that is
Yeah, so that's what we do here is really try to track that, and that's what I encourage a lot of my customers to do as we move forward too. Is to know where your elemental stuff is coming in, because that's when it gets really, it can get real tricky because you don't even realize like, the reason we went into such a panic with gloves is because we had an entire country, Malaysia, shut down everything for a month, and that's where the rubber comes from, and whether you use nitrile or whatever, it all comes from that same base raw material. And so it became, terribly scary when we have a pandemic with a virus and we need gloves more than ever and we don't have the raw materials to get them. And
yeah,
so even something so simple as something like that could be detrimental in, massive amounts of industries across the board.
that's wild. Well, let me ask you. So, when it comes to let's just say the Rocky Mountain reagents, right? What is it mostly through trade shows, or how do you go about finding your ideal distributors? How do you get new business?
Well, on the distribution side, it's typically the materials we manufacture here.
Mhm.
Most of the distributors I work with, I'm sorry, my email is going crazy. Most of the distributors that we work with and manufacturers that we work with already have distribution agreements with raw material suppliers. So they already have a solvent manufacturer, they already have an acid manufacturer. So I don't really distribute that stuff. It's more of the materials that I manufacture here. We have seen, again, mergers and acquisitions. There's a lot of that going on in almost every element of business at this point, but especially in the kind of business that I do, we've seen a lot of changing of guards, bringing two or three companies together, trying to combine ERPs, um, you know, consolidating sales stuff. So there's been some disruption in the marketplace that we've taken a little bit of advantage of. Where distributors that we were never able to really approach before now all of a sudden are like, hey, what you guys got over there? So
Nice.
it's been more organic, and in
Mhm.
that space we wanted it to be more organic. We didn't want to go into the market and like, we wanted to make sure that we could supply them with the products and not just be like what they were coming from. And so we've been very diplomatic and trying to ramp up in a very, scale in a way that was feasible for us. I've been here for 25 years, and one of our biggest mottos is under promise and over deliver every single time. And if you can't do that, and I think that should be true of any business, it doesn't matter if I'm selling widgets or chemicals, that's what you should be doing, and over communicate to your customers. I cannot tell you, especially we have 474 total vendors. And you're like, oh, that's coming in tomorrow. And they're like, oh no, I'm sorry, that's back ordered 2 weeks. And you're like, wait, hold, please.
Yeah.
Operations can't run like that. And so trying to be as you know, what I have found with customers, even if that's the situation, if you tell them in advance and they know when they're going to be much more sympathetic than trying to hustle around and make excuses. Be authentic, over communicate, and under promise and over deliver every time. And that organic message has been at the forefront of our success and it's been mostly organic. It's only been in the last 3 years we actually started marketing the company at all.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you. So for that sort of communication, kind of adding that whole cyber business, podcast aspect to this, what is there a tool that you use internally that helps you communicate? Because you have 700 and some distributors, you said. So
Oh,
that's a
no,
lot.
those are vendors. I only have
Vendors.
about
I'm sorry.
7 distributors, but we have over 3,000 clients too, so that makes it very difficult. But, we did switch over to a new ERP about 2.5 years ago, and it has been nice because it has a lot of the automations of auto communicating, like, if it's a back order, it will auto send. So we've built a lot of kind of the back end CRM, into our ERP to communicate, but each client has a dedicated customer service representative. Each client has a dedicated salesperson that they can elevate things to. And we really try to work hard to make sure that people know who their dedicated people are. Um, I find that if you have a relationship with a customer, it's much better to continue to have that than kind of flip flop around. But when you do talk about the cybersecurity, I mean, that is something that has been very difficult. I mean, not difficult, but we are a small business, and I'm sure you work with a lot of small businesses, and we do DoD contracts and we do aerospace contracts. We do with a lot of prime vendors. Colorado, for a lot of people don't know, is the third largest aerospace economy in the United States because of the GPS and satellites. So we have a lot of major aerospace people here. And so how we've had to kind of deal with that, especially with keeping up with the NIST regs and the FAR regs and every reg that comes out every 2 months that changes everything. I don't know how people would do that coming into that. I mean, we grew up with, Lockheed and all the aerospace. We kind of grew up into it. So it was like, oh, now you've got to implement this. Now you've got to implement this. Now you got to implement this. But if you had to start fresh, it would be very, very taxing, very, very taxing. So I always support small companies utilizing services like yours because it is, regulation on top of regulation. And sometimes you have to interpret which regulation is the one that you're supposed to be following because they don't necessarily match. And it seems like it should be very directive, but it's very not. It's not.
Yeah, no, it's tough because they don't want to be like, they don't want to say, use this product because as the government, they can't say that. So they got to say, we'll do these things that will, and it all makes sense. Yes. But at the same time, you'd be like, can't you just tell me use this product so we can just use that product or something like this? And so, yeah, with NIST and now CMMC, it's just a whole thing. And yeah, we've had a number of clients come to us that were government contractors or subcontractors. And it's a huge process to go from zero to, okay, now we're CMMC compliant. We're ready for the audit. And it's a big to do. But that's not what I want to talk about with with the cyber stuff. I'm kind of looking for a shout out for your CRM and your ERP. You feel, is that something you can share?
Oh,
What you're
sure.
using, what
We
you
went to
like about it?
NetSuite. So we went to NetSuite.
Nice.
Since we had been in business for a long time and kind of organically grown, we had way grown out of. We were QuickBooks and we were kind of patching everything together with different applications and trying to get it to kind of work. And NetSuite is a big program. It's got a lot of capabilities, but also that can be very overwhelming. So my instructions my instructions to my implementation team was just make it do what we're currently doing in other things. And then we can add in, but let's just get basics down, simple as possible, efficient as possible to get this thing rolling. And then we've been adding on, different things throughout this, financial reporting and like just all sorts of other stuff that has added to it, a complete quality system that is ISO. So there's a lot of things that we've added into it over the last 2.5 years. But when you look at it at first, you're like, I don't even know where to begin. It's almost paralyzing. For the CRM, we were with HubSpot, but we have transitioned everything into NetSuite.
Mhm.
But again, it's vast, and so it's not like a fun little GUI interface where you just go, oh, call an email, oh, text this guy, oh, it's like writing script and all of that. And I'm fortunate enough to have a person in house that writes all of our code and knows how we do business, so that helps a lot. But it's definitely a massive undertaking to do it on your own. But now that it's all there and it's all in one system, and anybody in the company, whether it's my quality department, my salesperson, my shipping department, they can see the last time I communicated, all of that stuff. So it has been transformative in a lot of ways, but it is very, very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming, and implementation can be pretty taxing for a company, especially if you're kind of all all running at 100% capacity as it is. Finding the capacity or the bandwidth to be able to implement was a challenge.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because I think you said something that I think is absolutely brilliant, and I think a lot of people miss this. Whether it's something as major, I mean, it's massive to go to an ERP from. It's just such a big undertaking. But even when it's something small, a lot of business owners they miss the fact they're like, what can this do? And then they try to fit their business into this technology. That's not, and I don't think that's the right way to use technology. As you say, how do you want to run your business, and how can the technology make this happen? So when you were like, look, we do business this way, make it work for us. Let's get this stuff going the way we do it. And then we'll build out from there. Yeah, you can learn more and grow and do cool stuff but you're right. You have your business keep doing what you're doing in NetSuite. And then because otherwise seen so many people, they take these huge bites of these things and now they're rearranging their company at the same time. And everybody, the stress that you went through just to implement is a lot. But now imagine implementing, and now you're rearranging your company because you got this new technology. It's like, that's a misstep. So I love that you did that. So my question, long-winded question, is how did you find the extra bandwidth? Because you're going at 100 miles an hour. Everybody's, going at 100. How do you go from 100 to, hey, we need to do 110? How did you make the extra space to implement?
Well, I put my COO in charge of the project management, and then my director of technology really was in charge of implementation. And those two really kind of ferreted out a lot of the things. And we would have monthly meetings, weekly meetings, daily meetings sometimes. But even like the small stuff, like I said, we just wanted it to replace QuickBooks in the beginning. That's all I asked them to do. But even in that, like, what does your invoice look like? What does your packing list look like? And just to kind of figure out like the flows of how does it go from a quote to a sales order to an item fulfillment to an invoice, all of that, and how does that flow work. That was even complicated, and that was just to replace QuickBooks. But we realized that the amount of time working in 5 different siloed systems, which is basically what we were doing, because we had a quality system, we had our ERP, we had, or well, not our ERP, our accounting system. I wouldn't call QuickBooks an ERP, but we had an inventory management system, we had a quality system, we had a manufacturing system. So, I mean, there was just so many things that you had to go back and check, that the time that we were spending in all of these systems and the efficiency, the lack of efficiency, we felt like it was actually going to improve us enough that we probably wouldn't need to hire another customer care rep, which is where we were getting. We were like, we need more people just to shuffle papers, essentially. That was the other thing about it. There's no papers anymore. Like my entire
Nice.
company was just, I mean, I think we got rid of 7 file cabinets. It was just like, we
Wow.
no longer need all this. It's all right here. And that
Awesome.
was like, when he told me we're not going to be a paper company, I was like, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And now we're not.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, I don't
Nice.
even need a printer anymore most of the time.
That's awesome. Well, 2 follow-up questions on that. How long did the initial implementation take you when you went just to your kind of QuickBooks implementation? And did you end up saving on hiring new customer care associates?
We didn't, because our business actually started to increase at that
Mhm.
point. So we didn't hire a new one that we needed to, but we didn't need to we kept our same staff. Um, we started talking about this in January, February, and to implement in November. We didn't actually implement until February the next year, but we weren't real
Okay.
focused in the beginning. And it really
Mhm.
was a lot of the team at NetSuite trying to make sure that they had all of the things, because we are a very different kind of business than most. So we run on a food manufacturing platform because
Hmm.
of what we do in the manufacturing place. But it has helped us to get and maintain all of our quality control systems in a much more efficient way, that we were able to go for more certifications like ISO. We're an FDA regulated facility, so if we wanted to go GMP, we could. We have white rooms here, so we could do that. So it's given us a lot of platform or
Mhm.
foundation to do a lot of things with minimal implementation from here, right? We just have to add a few
Yeah.
things or tweak a few things to get those things. Where before it would have been a massive undertaking to try and get some of those certifications.
Oh
So
yeah.
in that way, it really added a lot of credibility to our company, but also really, at the end, it really comes down to risk mitigation, and we want to make sure that we've got lot traceability and all those things all the way through. So that there has been a lot of savings for that, and just peace of mind.
Yep. Ah, marvelous. Well, not to go too deep into the ERP, but it's always fun when we get to kind of dive into these. So, just very quickly, are you able to do all of your companies now, or do you use these separately, like Rocky Mountain 710 and Cannabis Kitchen? Now that are they? How's that work with you? You've got 3 companies under one roof,
Yeah.
3 hats for you. Where does this all merge? Kind of,
Well, it is all one company. So Rocky Mountain Reagents is the company. 710 Spirits is a brand underneath the company. And then Cannabis Kitchen Supplies was kind of a siloed company. We acquired them. So now they are a brand vertical under us
Oh,
as well.
cool.
So we utilize departments to help kind of
Nice.
subset that.
Makes
And
sense.
that helped quite substantially because those customers are going to be different from my other customers. So when we run marketing campaigns, let's say if we're doing a marketing campaign for semiconductor, we can identify those because now that we've got departments under industrial, and then we've got different industry categorizations so that we can run different flows and different campaigns depending on which industry that we're focusing on. And so the cannabis kitchen is more instrumentation and equipment. 710 is just the chemistry around cannabis, and then the other industries that we have. And that has helped. And I must admit, we've changed things multiple times along the way. We went from like, we're going to do it this way to that way. No, we're going to have industry categories. No, now we're going to have, there's so many different ways, you can do things in NetSuite. So we've transitioned 2 or 3 different ways, but they weren't terribly difficult to switch over because it was like, this is too cumbersome. We need to fix this. How do we make this cleaner? And so we figured out how to do that. But it's been a process, and we've been in it about 2 years now, 2.5 years.
Nice. And you've gone from the financials to now, are you doing your CRMs in there as well now? And are you doing marketing out of there as well? And so kind
Yep.
of the whole 9 yards now, huh?
Yep. We're doing
That's so
everything out of
good.
it. And it's
That's amazing.
amazing. The only thing that we still haven't attached our website. So our website is still kind of freestanding because we're redesigning our website again. So with that, we wanted to get this really running well and make sure that we kind of ironed out all the kinks before we attach yet another thing to it. Anytime you add something that isn't part of that one program, you start to get in these situations where software updates can crash things, and you got to have IPAs, like IP APIs, and all these different things to transition information. And so we decided to just keep those siloed for right now and kind of manually push information between the two
Mhm.
until we've got NetSuite exactly kind of where we're 90% there. I never believe that we'll ever be 100%. I just don't believe in 100%, but 90% of the way there, that then we can start to get to 90% on the website.
Very cool. And of course, the geek in me wants to keep talking about that, but we'll stop.
Oh, that's
That's
fine with me.
fantastic.
I geek out on that stuff all the time.
It's so much fun. Well, let me ask you, because we haven't really talked yet about the National Cannabis Industry Association. What can you tell us about that?
So, National Cannabis Industry Association is the largest member network of cannabis businesses in the United States, and their primary focus is to lobby and create reasonable regulations and lobby Congress for ultimately federal legalization of cannabis products, whether it be hemp and CBD, or industrial hemp products, or marijuana, for whatever purpose. Um, so that's the main purpose of it. It's a lot of education. We have a lot of subcommittees that talk about like public safety, labeling requirements. So there's a lot of conversation and stakeholding that goes on in that organization to talk about how can we do this effectively. Because the last thing we want to do is go to Congress and go like, just legalize it. And they're like, how do you do that? And we're like, I don't know. So we're trying to like come up with a pretty large amount of information in white papers and data to kind of support the things that we're saying, whether it be testing protocols, and we work with multiple other organizations, or just as simply as safe banking. We passed safe banking, I think 6 or 7 times out of the House, never got past the Senate. And it seems like such a reasonable thing, especially in a place like Colorado where we've had marijuana for 15 years, that you can't put your money in a bank. And I know banking is a really iffy subject right now, but when you still have robberies happening, I mean, they don't
Yeah.
advertise them on TV. They don't say anything on the news or anything anymore because they don't want to be prime suspects, targets. But it's still happening all the time. And I've heard about it multiple times that people come in with an AK during the day, take all
Wow.
your money, take all your weed, and they could be taking 100, 200, $300,000 worth of materials. That's not safe for the industry. It's not safe for the consumers,
Yeah.
and it's just not a good way to kind of run business.
Yeah.
And so, just getting safe banking over the line. But there's been a lot of problems with that in cannabis. When you look at other lobbying groups, say oil and gas or pharma, everybody or healthcare, they spend $100, $200 million a year on lobbying efforts and
Hmm.
supporting candidates. Last year, cannabis spent, both marijuana and hemp spent 5 million, and one company was 3.5 million of it. So we don't have a voice yet
Yeah.
in Congress. We just don't. I mean, everybody kind of knows it's there. 80% of the US population says it should be at least recreational, but they're not listening because they're getting it from a lot of different other areas, whether it be banking or pharma or oil and gas or anything. I mean, they've got foreign policy. They have a lot to look at. And so if we're not kind of in their face saying, hey, look at us, look at us, look at us, they're not going to do anything. And so that's kind of been my message in that space, and why I want to be a part of that organization, is to bring all of these companies together and have a voice, but also the suppliers into that. We've seen, I've been here for 15 years, kind of at the beginning of when all this started. And now I'm seeing companies that have not been in this market at all. And now they're like, oh, we should go to cannabis because we can make a lot of money. And it's like, why don't I tell all my MSOs, multi-state operators, like, make sure you're buying from suppliers who support this industry, because it's still not a legal industry. And those are the guys that are making a lot of money. If you're buying a $300,000 piece of equipment and they're not doing something, educating, advocating, doing something to support this industry, don't buy from those guys. I mean, I hate to be that kind of cynical about it, but it makes it very difficult. And when you're giving all this money, and the guys on the front line, the MSOs and the product manufacturers, the dispensary owners, they're paying for, the taxation, but on the back end, what people don't see is they're paying for the regulation. So like, for example, that in June, they're putting forth another set of testing regimens here in Colorado. Those tests cost money every time. If you're looking at $500 to $1,000 per batch to have it third party validated, that gets expensive. And every time they add a test, it's more expensive. And you're clogging the supply chain of laboratories. So the supply chain isn't just like raw materials. It's also, do you have companies that can provide services for the things that you're altering? So you've got the MSOs paying for the taxation on the front side, the licensing on this side, the protection and security on this side, and making sure that all their products are hitting new regulations almost monthly. And it can only be for that state too, by the way. Every state is different. So you can't take your CBD product from this state to that state because the regs are different. That's a lot for a company to try and keep track of if they're just trying to produce like a lollipop, right?
Yeah.
We the ancillaries who know how to do pharma, we know how to do nutraceuticals, we know how to do food. We need to be the ones talking about this. We need to be ones advocating.
Yeah. Well, when you say testing, right? You just mentioned that. What exactly do you mean? Are you talking about testing the product? What's that entail? The
Testing the product. So at the end of it, and the way that I think about it, like we talked about with the tea and the oil, and so the very end oil, that is what you're going to add. And then you can take that oil and go to isolate, which is like powder. So you can have like powdered CBD, right? You have to test those two things, either the distillate or the isolate. And you need to test that because, again, you're concentrating this plant down to its bare minimum, but you're also concentrating heavy metals, pesticides, different cannabinoids. You're doing a lot with that, right? So
Yeah.
they have to test that end product to make sure that heavy metals are under the regulation. And where I like to say is that distillate or that isolate is now an ingredient. That becomes the ingredient to the gummy, the cookie, the sucker, whatever it is. What we saw was that they wanted those two things tested, but then they wanted the cookie tested. So in California, for example, I had a cookie manufacturer that his isolate tested fine, his distillate tested fine, but they didn't test the flower to the same specifications as they were testing the cannabis. So when they made his cookie popped for a pesticide that shouldn't have been there. But why are you making him test again with food grade ingredients? So that's been one of the challenges: is what is the sample, what is the product, and so that's another thing we've been really pushing. Is it really comes down to, once it becomes a raw material ingredient and tested, then that's where it stops.
Right.
Other than potency.
Sure. Wow. So, I mean, it's a long road. I mean, right? I mean, from where, even though it's been legal, let's say in Colorado for 15 years, and a lot, there's been a lot of progress, there's still a huge road ahead, it sounds like.
There is. But I mean, we've had hemp since 2012 in the Farm Bill. And so we've had CBDs and like a lot of the cannabinoids coming out of hemp that are non-intoxicating, as they would call it. we've had those out in the market. And so we know how to treat those. We know what it is. And they're very similar to other vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C. I mean, they're very similar products that they could be comparing this to, that the FDA can be like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't want these things in it. Or you look at how it's being isolated and say, okay, they're isolating it with these chemicals. Let's make sure they're testing it for these chemicals. So it's already, I mean, it's already written, it's already done. It's just trying to get it to the FDA to say, yes, okay, cool. That's been really problematic because it just feels like everybody's like, we don't want to touch it. It's like, oh, it's
Right.
too big of a problem. Again, it's almost like the ERP, right? It feels too massive. It becomes paralyzing. And
Right.
then, so it's like, no, just do this one little thing. And if you do that one little thing, it'll lead to this next little thing. And then it's not so overwhelming.
Absolutely. I like to think of it as a foot in the door approach. If you can just get that tiny little thing, I mean, and obviously there's been a lot of that progress, but on the federal level, I mean, has there really been any progress? I mean, I don't think federally there's been any progress. It's been a brick wall, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. And actually, the FDA just kind of pushed it back to industry again. We kind of said, hey, you guys, we need something. So I'm part of, 3 different organizations, the National Cannabis Laboratories Council, where we've taken 48 laboratories in 18 states with blind data. We have tested all of these products, taken all of that, accumulated into a scientific data report. And then we took all the regulations from every state and said, okay, what are we seeing? If California says you got to do 50 of this and New Jersey says you got to do 7, where's the balance? So
Right.
we went through every kind of product in cannabis, hemp, or marijuana and said, this is what you should be testing for in flower, and here's why. Here's the data that supports it. And these are the things you're also asking for. There's no data to support it. And so we went through each one of those things and created a 53-page white paper. ASTM, the D37 Commission, has been they've been working for 4 years now. They've got a pretty comprehensive report on how to do the testing. We were saying what to test for. They're saying, here's how you test for it, and here's the procedures and all the things. And then there's another group that is looking for national accreditation of laboratories for cannabis to accreditate them nationally. So between our 3 organizations, we have written all of these papers to say, here you go. Here it
Yeah.
is. It's not and it's science it's not just industry, it's science backed with data. And we're continuing to collect data.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like a bunch of hippies trying to, get pot legalized. You've really, brought it into the modern age. It's all industrialized. You've got all the regulations written out, everything, and yet still, you've got that political challenge, right? I mean, people just don't want to touch it. So it's
Yeah, and
tough.
it's complicated,
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like cannabis it obviously got a bad rap when we had total prohibition on it. But I think when we really went into this cannabis, it really, into this new kind of decade and a half, it really got way too recreationally focused. And it really the medical piece of that kind of got lost in the messaging. And, for me, I have a lot of friends that are patients that need this, and it is medicine. And it's not just about, going to a Cypress Hill concert and whatever. It really is about like, I'm using this for pain medication. I'm using this for, to help my appetite. I'm using this for PTSD, antidepressant, like whatever it is. There's a lot of people utilizing this to help them, with their own ailments of whatever that is. It's not just about, big blunts and rolling with Snoop Dogg. It's
Yeah.
really about the medicine. And when you see it change people's lives, that's the only reason I am really here. I mean, I personally don't partake in it at all. I'm just not good at it, so I don't. But I know what it can do for people for medicine, and that's
Yeah.
where I think the message has really gotten lost. And that's why politicians don't want to touch it. It's like, oh, they don't need another alcohol. They don't need, they don't need another center drug. That's not what this is. This is medicine.
Yeah. Well said. Um, so you are on the board of ILDA. Yeah.
I
Um,
am
can
this
you tell
year.
us about that?
Woohoo!
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks. I've been a member of ILDA, I think it's my 6th year, but I've been kind of on the periphery of them for the last 15 or 20, known about them, gone to a few meetings here and there. But this last time I've rejoined 6 years ago and really got involved. Again, it was that bandwidth thing, right? There was no bandwidth to really be a part of an organization or say, like, hey, buy my stuff because we couldn't have done it at that time.
Right.
Um, but being a part of it, there have been so many wonderful benefits to it. Um, Even though it's a very funny organization because my direct competitors are there, right? And
Yeah.
all my distributors are there. So it's a very strange kind of place, but I really love it because even it has taught me in business. For years I thought you always like your competition was your enemy. And that's not true. You can have really lovely collaborative relationships with people that compete directly with you because more than likely they're only competing with you on 15 or 20% of your product line, and they may have capabilities in places that you don't, and you may have capabilities in places they don't. And so being able to really sit down and have that collaboration conversation without kind of giving away the 25 or 30% market share of what you guys are doing and they're doing, it really has been transformative. I feel like coming out of the late 90s, mid 90s and late 90s, everybody was like, don't talk to him, he's with that company, but now it's not like that. And I think working in cannabis industry has helped that too, to change my kind of philosophy about that. I'm second generation. My daughters work here, so third generation. We got three generations here. Meeting a lot of second and third generation owners, talking about succession planning of small businesses, meeting some amazing friends along the way, learning about new technologies. It's just been such a wonderful experience. Everybody I've met there has such an amazing amount to contribute. And their stories of what they're doing in their businesses is just inspiring. Every time I come away from an ILDA meeting, I come back fired up and ready to do some stuff. So I really love being a part of it. And I was really honored to be asked to be a part of this board, because I do respect this organization so much and the other people on the board so much. So it was a little surprising, to be honest, but I'm really excited to be a part of it. Yeah, so that's that. But I have met some of my best friends at ILDA. Two of my best friends, and they don't live in Colorado, but they, when you have such a similar experience where you've transitioned, your parents have transitioned out, and you're transitioning in, and how do you take the big one is how do you take a 70-year-old company and make it relevant again?
Yeah.
So just kind of, I still feel like we're kind of in entrepreneurial startup mode, but we've been around for 70 years. So it's a
Yeah.
little hard to say that. So talking to other people about how you kind of reinvigorate, how do you keep, a lot of us have staff that have been around 20 and 30 years. So
Yeah.
how do you get staff recharge, reinvigorate, keep them from hitting kind of the brick wall and burnout? So just being able to have real conversations with leaders in industry doing something so similar, it's like almost like therapy sometimes.
That's great. No, I was shocked with how, just very friendly and open everybody is there at ILDA, which is different than a lot of organizations, and that collaborative friendliness. I think we're seeing it you see it in other industries, and I think it's becoming more common now. People are starting to realize the world is a big enough place. There's plenty for everybody. This whole dog eat dog, there's only room for one at the top mentality. I don't think it really applies so much today because, I think for a lot of reasons. One, I think the consumers are highly educated a lot of times because of the internet. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't have access to this level of information. So you kind of wanted to kill your competition. So that the consumer was, was getting all their information from you and not from anywhere else. Well, you can't do that now. They get all their information from and a lot of times they know the product or service as well as the salesperson, right? As well as the manufacturer sometimes. And so it really becomes one of these things where organizations like ILDA, where they can bring you together to benefit from those relationships. And well, when they don't have something, they can refer people to you and vice versa. That's just a leg up. That's an advantage.
Oh,
So
I definitely feel that way. I mean, absolutely. And I think, and the other part of that is the sales strategy has changed, not just because the consumer has changed, but I think the entire sales strategy has changed too. That people don't want to hard sell. They want to have a relationship. They want to have something trusting. And I think that the sales strategies of 20 or 30 years ago, when I got into this thing, have completely changed. And it feels like it's changing every 2 or 3 years, but especially in laboratories with procurement people in laboratories, these are young people. Now
yeah,
it's like 20 and 30-year-olds buying. And so they want to have a different relationship with their supplier. than maybe, others in the past did. A lot of it's being driven by costs, here in Colorado, we're kind of a chemical desert. So when you have a chemist leave, one company goes to another. So you may not get that client, if he leaves and he's always been buying from you, maybe they're not going to buy from you anymore. So finding out who that second layer is in the company is always something that's kind of more of what we're doing. But then they take you to the next place. I have one chemist that's jumped 4 jobs and he's taken me to every single one of them. And I've maintained all 4 of them. It's like,
Nice.
okay. But it's because of that kind of more personal
Yeah.
relationship. You don't have to go golfing anymore. You don't have to the strategies are much, much different. And being more personable and relational has
Yeah.
become much more an effective tactic in sales than kind of the drive the price to the bottom. That's the other thing we really focus on here is if you want a bottom price, then the internet's here for you.
Yeah.
I have a quality department full of 2 chemical engineers, and they cost money. So if you want to make sure that you've got complete lot traceability, that you've got resources that if there's a recall, if anything, we're here for you. If you're looking to just go to the bottom, you can buy that online, and you won't have any support. If you want to make sure that you're talking to Maddie or Crystal every time because they know that you're going to need it faster than what you say, or you're not going to need it until next week, they already know those things. They can figure your rhythms out. But there's a cost to all of that. Customer service and providing quality service and providing quality services really does have a cost associated to it. And I'm hoping, and what we saw out of the pandemic is that especially procurement agents that were buying things from 50 people are like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like I am, you know, so, and I have a real soft spot for procurement agents because during COVID, we all became procurement agents. We were like, all
Right.
right, you call these 3 companies, I'll call these, but it just was the Wild West again. So I have a lot of sympathy. So them going to more of the one-stop shop, maybe it does cost me 5% more, but I'd rather do that and have the peace of mind that I know they're going to take care of me and I don't have to make 50 phone calls.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think you're right. And I think it's changing everywhere. It's funny because a few years ago ish, I joined this very large marketing group for kind of IT and cybersecurity companies. And they were very much on this old school kind of marketing. They had lots of people who swore by it and they were dumping tons of money into it and all that, and so it's just all the hardcore, sales, you know, emails and letters and then sending them stuff. And it's this constant, just no relationship with the people whatsoever. You just bombard them with old school, basically used car salesman type sales approach. And I'm like, and they've got all these businesses that have grown up doing this and somehow it works. But we we have yet to get a one client that we didn't have a relationship with beforehand, like some sort of relation. And we've kept all of our clients for 10, 13 years, so depending on when we got them. But we've been in business about 12, 13 years now. And we have our very first clients and it's all been relationship. And I can't somehow figure out, and I don't think I want to figure out how to get those clients that I don't have a relationship with, because I think they end up leaving quickly because they don't have a relationship. It's a race to the bottom. Who can provide me with this, the cheapest, easiest, like, well, I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to be that. The internet's there for you. You can go get that somewhere. But if you want quality, whatever, that comes at a cost and it brings a lot of value. So you get what you pay for. But I'm
You
right there
do.
with you.
I keep telling my staff, like, I want to be Coca-Cola. I don't want to be Monster Energy drink. And I don't want to be RC. Like, I want to be just a Coca-Cola brand. I just want to stay in that like middle section of just regular, but not high end, not low end, just
Yep.
regular.
I
And
love
if
it.
we can just maintain that, I'm good.
Sounds great.
Because that's definitely it.
Fantastic. Well, okay, let's talk about the Colorado Titan 100. Congratulations is in order, but can you tell us about the
Thanks.
Colorado Titan 100?
So it is a program that's been around in Colorado for 3 years. So it is the 100 top CEOs in Colorado, according to Titan 100. So I was very honored to be nominated this year, and I was blown away when I was selected. I was like, "How did you even find me? Like, I don't even know how this even worked." Because there's a lot of people in it that a lot of major companies that in Colorado that uh, it it still feels like a little bit imposter syndrome. Like, I shouldn't be on the stage with these guys. These guys have done real things. I'm just goofing around in cannabis and forensics. But it was really an honor. So there'll be a dinner in June. And then there's a lot of network opportunities for us to work together and kind of elevate. So it's a pretty exciting award to get. Very, very surprised that this came through today or this year.
Yep. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know we're running a little long on time, but before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more information about you and your company?
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain Reagents or rmreagents.com. We have all of the different brands on there. We're getting ready to kind of launch that. If you're interested in the other organizations, NCIA, if cannabis is kind of the track you're on, NCIA is a fantastic organization. And then check out the National Cannabis Laboratories Association, because what they're doing to really provide the data there is imperative to moving any needles anywhere. But LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me in any of my things. And it's just Liz Geisleman at LinkedIn. And I'd love to connect with people. And I love to talk about leadership, because another role I'm on and I'm rolling off of a board of is a leadership foundation that I've been on for 10 years, where we teach, we do a leadership program that's a year long with 30 professionals. And we've been doing that since it's a 35-year-old program. So we do that for teenagers and we do that for adults here in Colorado. And I love talking to people. I've had so many amazing mentors throughout my career. And so now I'm trying to pay that back through helping with mentoring others, kind of getting their entrepreneurial feet underneath them. So if anybody just wants to connect and chat, I would love to do that, because I love to hear about what everybody's doing and how I can be an assistant. So just check me out on LinkedIn, I guess is the best way.
Fantastic. What's the name of that organization, your mentoring or leadership organization that you're a part of?
The West Metro Chamber Foundation, or West Metro Leadership Foundation, sorry.
Okay, and we will put links to all of that below.
Okay.
Fantastic. And you mentioned mentors, and we do love to ask, is there one particular mentor or mentors that you'd like to, tell a quick story about, share an anecdote, and give a shout out to?
Sure, he probably will never see this, but he was my high school humanities teacher, Mr. Morris, and I am still friends with him on Facebook to this day. But he changed the entire trajectory of kind of what I didn't know anything about anything as a sophomore in high school. And having him mentor me, I did a lot of writing in high school, and I've done a lot of all sorts of different stuff there. And he gave me a lot of inspiration and courage to believe that I could pretty much do anything. And from that, I've never forgotten that. And we still have great conversations. The other one would be my Congressman, Ed Perlmutter. I've worked with him for 18 years. He just retired, which I'm very sad for, but he has been a great friend. It's just been wonderful to have somebody in that position that you can talk to, really talk to. And he is a servant leader. And it made me believe in politics again because of him. There are those people out there that are there in DC because they want to make a difference and they want to do good stuff. Sometimes our federal or our national news cycle doesn't make it seem like that. There are a lot of people that are in politics, whether it be locally or federally, that care and they want to hear from you. And that was a fantastic relationship. And those two people in particular really influenced a lot of the change and direction of what I've done in my life. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to shout out to them.
Of course. And I think I couldn't think of a better note to end on that. The beautiful stories. That's fantastic. And again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us.
Absolutely. Well, you have a fantastic day and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.